Thank you, Sean. I now know what Jay Leno felt like when he took over for Johnny Carson. Now, I've known Michael since 1979. We were classmates in Psychology 101. My wife, Donna, was also in that class. She and I were students, and if I recall, Michael was a test subject. But that was a long time ago, so I'm not sure. And I think he was my co-chair for Minneapolis. I think that might have just changed. Anyhow, Sir Sean, thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide you with this Holy Land update. I could spend a lot of time, and we don't have a lot of time. So I'm going to do this relatively quickly and would be very happy during the rest of the weekend to answer any questions in detail. Just seek me out, and I'll be happy to share whatever I can. I believe in transparency. And so I am going to try to be as transparent as possible in this presentation today to let you know what I've seen and saw in my visits to the Holy Land. There is a mission statement that is in our Constitution. And I want to point out two things of this mission statement. The first is, this is a mission that's assigned by His Holy Father to our order. This is something we are supposed to do. I mean, He has given us an assignment. And He asks us to take the assignment of supporting these folks and these places with an animated zeal. So it's not to be a passive support. We are supposed to be very active in our support for what is the needs of the people and the places in the Holy Land. You might notice at the bottom a slide that looks very familiar to yesterday's slide. It turns out that our Vice Governor General stole my slide, which might be why he's in Fort Wayne and not here. As Michael just pointed out, prayer, pilgrimages, and financial contributions are really the way that we support the Christians in the Holy Land. Also in the Constitution, it talks about what the Holy Land Commission is. Frankly, in a nutshell, we are the eyes and ears for the Grand Magisterium on the ground in the Holy Land. That is what they want us to do. They want us to be on the ground. They want us to listen. They want us to look. They want us to ask questions. And then they want us to bring that information back to them so that priorities can be established and plans can be made. It's a three-member group. Sir Bart McEtrick from Scotland is the president of the commission. He also sits on the Grand Magisterium. Lieutenant of Honor Detlef Brummer from Germany is also on the commission. You're going to notice a name that's missing, and that is the name of my beautiful wife, Donna. Turns out that there's a European tradition that only the single person is a part of the commission's work and not the couple. And I am pleased to report that the North American tradition of couples working together has now taken precedence, and when we leave on Thursday, Donna will be joining the commission for its work. So, and if you think you're happy, you can't imagine how much happier I am. What do? At least twice a year, we actually go to the Holy Land, usually in the spring and the fall. When we get there, it's a very busy time. It is much different than a pilgrimage. I think when I went in March, I got about 20 minutes at the Holy Sepulchre, and that was the only pilgrimage site that I visited in the 10 days I was there. We are at the parishes. We are at the convents. We're at the seminaries. We're visiting with the staff. We're reviewing budgets. The order provides about $12 million of funding each year to the Latin Patriarchate, and part of our role is to make sure that that $12 million is used well. We review the project status. We look at future needs and assessing what those needs are. We at least visit 2 or 3 parishes. We almost always get to the seminary. We get to convents. We get to nursing homes. Last time, we actually went into the homes of the people that received the humanitarian aid. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. The Latin Patriarchate is the beneficiary of most of our money. Now, I say most of our money because, of course, Michael and Mary just talked about Bethlehem University, which is not technically part of the Patriarchate. There are also other orders that are affiliated in some ways with the Catholic Church, but not necessarily part of the Patriarchate, that also get funding from the order. But it is the order that provides the major source of funding for the Patriarchate. As you know, it has a long, turbulent history, really was not officially created until the mid-1850s. And that's important because when you see a later slide, you're going to see schools that were formed in the 1850s. What's the core mission of the Patriarchate? To serve the needs of the Christians within their region, to evangelize the good news of salvation. There are only about 2% left of the population that are Christians. So the work of evangelization is actually very, very large work. Recruit and train their native people to serve the church, to create and maintain the schools, to educate the young, and of course, the humanitarian aids of serving the needy. Oops, I went a little too quick. Bill, can I go backwards? The Patriarchate is broken down into 4 geographical regions, okay, with 4 different vicariates. The one I want to point out is in the lower left-hand corner, the Vicariate for Migrants and Asylum Seekers. This is something that is relatively new. I'm going to talk about it very, very briefly at the end. There are more Christians, in fact, more Roman Catholics who are coming in as migrants than there are currently living in the geographical boundaries of the Latin Patriarchate. It creates a tremendous outreach issue for sacramental support. You saw this slide in Tom's presentation as well yesterday. Where does the money go from the order? How do we distribute it? We distribute it to institutional expenses. Part of that institutional expenses includes the teacher salaries. Okay, that's all considered part of that institutional money. The clergy health care expenses, the humanitarian aid, obviously the Holy Mass money goes to the Latin Patriarchate. Outside of the Patriarchate, again, there's the Bethlehem University, there's some non-LPJ schools that are based on other Christian orders that get some money from the order, and some other institutions. This is the key point. We are the main support person for the Latin Patriarchate. If it's not us, it's no one, okay? We provide them with somewhere around 21% of their budget. And so the donations we make through our annual appeals are critical. That's the only way that they stay in existence. Briefly, you've seen this photo so many times, but I wanted to break it down a little bit for you so that you could see there's 2 parishes in Jerusalem, there's 14 parishes in Palestine, there's 14 in Israel, 32 in Jordan, 4 in Cyprus, and then one of the vicariates actually is parishes in the Hebrew-speaking areas of Israel that are Christians. There's 110 priests serving all those parishes and the various outreach ministries. There is a seminary in Bet Jala. We've had some talks over that over the years. There are 18 major seminarians with 3 priests that are training them. And this is a very important thing and a very sad thing. The minor seminary is closed, and its future is in limbo. During the pandemic, a law was changed in Israel requiring minors under the age of 17 and a half to be living with a parent. And so there were 40 young men, ages 14 to 18, living in the minor seminary, obviously without their parents, and they could not come back to that living arrangement based on the change in the Israeli law. And as a result, the minor seminary is closed. And it's a tragedy. A huge percentage of those minor seminarians went into the major seminary. And so now one of their issues that they're trying to wrap their hands around is how do we keep in contact with these young, high school age men and keep them engaged into the religious life. It's a huge challenge. The school system, 44 schools, 13 in Palestine, 25 in Jordan, 6 in Israel. They employ 1,758 professionals, and they serve just under 19,000 students, of which 11,000 are Christian. Our schools are integrated. It's important to know that. We have Muslim kids in the schools. There's a different pay rate, okay, and there's a different financial support rate, but there are Muslim kids in the schools with the Christian kids. And having visited the schools, it would be impossible until about age 13 to tell the difference, because at age 13, the Muslim girls start to wear their hijab, yes, and then you can tell. Otherwise, you would never know which ones are the kids because they are totally integrated and the kids don't know the difference. They're friends. And if there's ever going to be peace in the area, that's how it's going to start. It's going to start with the kids. This slide will ultimately be on the website so that you can look at some of the details as far as how long the schools have been in existence, where they are, and things of that nature. When we talked about funding, there's 2 sources of funding, and Michael mentioned that as well in his report. There's the institutional funding. And Sean mentioned yesterday, there is a need for $775,000 every month to take care of the administration expenses, the teacher pay, the humanitarian aid. This is our annual donation. So when you send in your annual donation every April, March, whenever you send it in, that money is what goes for those things. And we have a commitment every month to send that money. The project funding is separate, okay? Typically projects less than $250,000, okay? Typically between 20 and 30,000 projects each year. This is where the lieutenant's discretionary money goes, or the special collection money that Michael and Mary were talking about. That's how those things get funded. It is a very important distinction. There are places in the world where people make a donation to a project and don't make a donation to the annual fund. And all that does is impact the ability to pay the teachers and to cover the rents and to pay the utility bills, because the money is very dedicated to what the purpose it is that it's been given for. It does not get commingled. Michael and Mary, Bill, I'm sorry, I went one too far again. Michael and Mary talked about the projects. I believe this is the 2021 project list, and I'm not going through all the projects. I want to point out 2 or 3 key things. First of all, if you see a project in green, that project has been funded and that project is complete. If you see a project that is in yellow, that is a project that is still underway. If you see a project that's in red, no one funded that project. That project did not get funded, okay? And the important thing I wanted to point out, and this is especially more for members that might have been here for a long time, I want you to see how detailed the record keeping is of what's happening. I spent 90 minutes last visit with the finance director and went through the budgets. They have spreadsheets, records of every expense, every person that got paid, and what the results are of the money that was spent. I know that there had been, years ago, concerns of how is our money actually being used. I can tell you from personal experience that the money is very well used and it is very well accounted for. They are using the same accounting practices that Dave Byrne uses for our lieutenancy. It is very professionally done. These are the projects from 2022, and as you'll notice, the colors are different because there are still projects that are still being completed and a handful that have been finished. The projects in 2023, again, more still underway, some completed, okay? Michael talked about the 2023 projects. These are the 2023 projects, and now a little transparency, and I'm sure Archbishop Naumann will give me absolution for maybe talking out of school. Why the small number of projects? The reality is collections from Europe in the fourth quarter of 2022 were not as strong as were expected. They were starting to feel the effects of worldwide recession, and as a result, the order used money from our reserves to ensure that the $775,000 was made each month in November and in December to make sure that those institutional costs were covered, okay? That caused concern at the Grand Magisterium level because the concern was, is this a short blip or is this the sign of a longer-term recessionary situation? They chose to be very conservative in budget, and they were very conservative on projects because they were nervous about projects getting priority over the institutional funds. And that's why such a limited number of projects were released in 2023. And I think it's important for everybody to realize that there's a thought process behind all this. People are really thinking about how this gets managed. I broke down the financial needs into really two categories. There's needs for infrastructure and there's needs for humanitarian aid. In the needs for infrastructure, you're talking about things like buildings. And Sean alluded to in this presentation yesterday, one of those needs is within the Latin Patriot schools. The number of students in the Latin Patriot schools is decreasing. It is decreasing in some ways because the school facilities and their teaching aids are frankly behind those of the public schools and those of some of the other Christian entities that are also sponsoring schools in the area. The Latin Patriot schools are the cheapest. They have the lowest tuition, okay? But as a result, they have some of the least resources for the kids. And some of the parents are starting to vote with their feet by going to the schools with the larger resources. Now, we have been picking off classrooms every year. Michael mentioned that we did a classroom 2 years ago. And this is the difference of what happens when you do the classrooms. You know, on the left, this is a lab room that didn't get touched. On the right, a lab room that got redone, okay? Here's a case where on the left, that was the classroom that looked before the smart boards and the other things come in to play and upgrade the classroom, okay? So that's the things that we've been doing, but the problem is there are 500 classrooms across the entire Patriarchate, and we've been lucky to touch about 10% of them over the last 7 years. And the reason for that is even with 30 projects a year, you can't get to 500 classrooms because there's convents that need work and other things as well. It's going to require a special effort. And it's being thought about and it's being worked on. Sean alluded to it yesterday. Nothing to announce today, but it's certainly been identified as something that we're going to have to do. A couple of other little quick ones. We redid 3 of the rooms in the seminary and housing in Bet Jala. Father Pogge is there. No relation to Tom Pogge. He wanted me to make sure I said that. He's got an I, Tom's got an E. Most of the parishes have HVAC issues like the one you see on the right-hand side. Most of the parishes and schools have plumbing issues like you see on the left-hand side. We're not talking about building buildings. We're talking about needing to just fix things so the mop and the bucket don't have to be under the sink in the school bathroom. Humanitarian aid. The Israelis in general have done a very good job keeping humanitarian aid going through the pandemic and through the post-pandemic phase for themselves and their population, their citizens. The people in Palestine have completely fallen through the cracks. And as it turns out, the Latin Patriarchate has become the safety net. They are the safety net for humanitarian aid. And the chart shows you what it means. It's medical aid, it's medicines, scholarships, taking care of rent. This is one of the nursing homes that we went to see, and who we just spent money on helping their PT room get redone to help provide physical therapy and occupational therapy for the residents. We're the funding source, and this comes out of that annual donation. So if we don't make good on our commitment to the donation, these things just simply don't happen because there is no other source. Another set of just really quick slides. These are some of the homes that we went to visit. The people welcomed us in our homes. I will tell you, I have never been so embarrassed in my life, because in every one of these homes with people who frankly have nothing, they found a way to provide us with a treat in the Arabic world of hospitality. And very difficult to accept their treat, knowing that they gave from their needs and their wants to show their appreciation for our efforts. And probably the hardest part, that's a very typical apartment that we might have walked into to show you what is there. I'm out of time. Sean's being very gracious to let me go over as far as he is. He hasn't pulled the hook yet. Things I don't have time to talk about, lots of pastoral activities. The Vicariate for Immigrants and Asylum Seekers, they estimate there's 100,000 immigrants, many Roman Catholics, many from places like the Philippines, who are living in personal service jobs for Israeli families who have limited, if no access to the sacraments. And it's a big issue. They're trying to figure out how they can do the ministry to those people, because that's more than what's in the parishes. When I go next week, Donna and I leave on Thursday. His Beatitude, His Eminence Pizzabella, boy, he's got a lot of titles now. He has hired somebody to do a strategic plan. He is trying to come up with a strategic plan for the area, and we're going to have the privilege of meeting the leader of the strategic planning process, who has asked us for his insights on those matters. We make a difference, folks. I showed the slide just showing some of the things that we've done to make a difference. We make a big difference. And even though I spent all this time talking about needs and things, you can't leave the room without saying we make a difference. And so I have to end with one last slide. We were in what's called a retreat house. Change the word retreat to nursing home. Okay? We were in a nursing home in Tabith, and one of the residents was there in his 90s. heard that the order was there, and he went into his room and he put on his robe. And he brought out his certificate, signed in 1972, as Sir Nolan Pickering was vested in Belgium. And he was so pleased to see us and just amazed to put on his robe. So folks, we make a difference. And I thank you for your attention today, and I'll take questions anytime during the weekend that you might have. And I'm going to beg Sean for another 10 minutes next time. Thanks, Sean.